Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Alison LaGrange, live from Durban, South Africa. Let's begin with the top headlines. India's central bank cuts the interest rates by 25 basis points as US President Donald Trump's 26% tariffs against the world's fifth largest economy come into effect. China urges its citizens to avoid war zones after Ukraine says its troops captured 2 Chinese citizens fighting alongside the Russian forces. Indonesia announces readiness to grant temporary shelter to Palestinians affected by the ongoing war in Gaza, offering to prioritize wounded victims and orphaned children for evacuation and recovery. A nationwide general strike in Greece disrupts public services with ferries, flights and public transport affected as unions push to end the ongoing austerity measures imposed over a decade ago. And Meta bans users under the age of 16 from live streaming on its platforms without parental consent as the tech giant begins rolling out teen accounts with more stringent privacy settings. Hello and welcome. Now, over 16 years since India's deadliest terrorist attacks that claimed the lives of over 160 people. 26/11 attack accused Tahawwur Rana is set to land in India. The former Pakistani military doctor turned terror mastermind Tahawwur Rana is being flown to India on a special plane. The Indian government has reportedly received an extradition document called surrender warrant from the US after the Mumbai terror attack accused extradition was approved by the US Supreme Court. The American Supreme Court denied Rana's application to halt his extradition to India, citing that he had exhausted all legal options available. Reports say a team of India's anti-terror agency, the NIA, as well as the Home Ministry officials were in the US to facilitate Rana's extradition. After landing in India, terror attack accused is expected to be held in a high-security detention facility in Delhi's Tihar jail and is likely to be quizzed by Mumbai Police and intelligence officials. Rana's extradition could help the probe agencies expose the role of Pakistani state actors behind the dastardly 2008 attack. So who exactly is Tahawwur Rana? The Pakistani-origin Canadian national Tahawwur Rana is an alleged conspirator in 2008 Mumbai terror attacks and was arrested in the US in 2009. He has been linked with Pakistani-American terrorist David Coleman Headley and other conspirators. Now, Rana is accused of helping Headley secure a visa to India for a recce of targets. He is also accused of providing a blueprint to terror group Lashkar-e-Taiba to execute attacks. Rana also provided material support for plot to attack a Danish newspaper. Mumbai Police say Rana came to India days before the 26/11 terror attacks and stayed in a 5-star hotel for around 5 days before the attack. After over a decade-long diplomatic effort by New Delhi, in May of 2023, the US Supreme Court approved Rana's extradition to India. In February of 2025, US President Donald Trump confirmed the development and described Rana as an evil man who will face justice in India.
We're giving a very violent man, it seems to me. I mean, I don't know that he's been convicted yet or will be, but let's assume he's a pretty violent person. We're giving him back to India immediately, and there are more to follow because we have quite a few requests. So we work with India on crime, and we want to make it good for India.
Rana's extradition is being seen as a key moment in India's fight against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. On the 26th of November 2008, a group of 10 Pakistani terrorists went on a deadly rampage, carrying out a coordinated attack on a railway station, 2 luxury hotels and a Jewish centre, after they snuck into India's financial capital, Mumbai, using the Arabian Sea route. After years of legal battles, Tahawwur Rana is finally set to face justice in India for his role in the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. With his extradition now confirmed, Rana will soon land in India to be questioned and will be held accountable for the tragedy that claimed over 160 lives. Will this mark a new chapter in the fight against terrorism? Now, to answer this question and more, we have with us Dr. Vivek Mishra, the Deputy Director of Strategic Studies Program at ORF. He is joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you for being with us, Doctor.
Thank you.
Now, what does Tahawwur Rana's extradition mean for India's pursuit of justice in the 26/11 case, especially given the long delay since the attacks?
Oh, it's a remarkable moment in terms of achieving a closure for so many families that had been hurt in this heinous crime so long ago. And I think that arc of justice is finally closing. But I think it's not complete until the person comes here and faces the justice under the Indian Penal Code and under the Indian legal system. So I think that's one. One is certainly the closure for the families. But the second important thing is the fact that we had been stonewalled with this, with some of the aspects of investigation in terms of exposing Pakistan, that it had a direct hand in it. Now, we had elements like Kasab, who faced the full might of the Indian law. But I think the Tahawwur Rana, the extradition, really could open further counterterrorism details into that investigation. And that's why you see that a team from Mumbai is rushing. The third aspect is, of course, the fact that the United States-India counterterrorism cooperation and what it means going into the future. I think the cooperation at the international level, internally, and the momentum from the Trump administration and zero tolerance against terrorism, all of that combined, I think that the connection at the international level is really gaining new grounds going forward from here.
Right. And Doctor, just how strong is the evidence against Rana? And what, if any, challenges might Indian authorities face in prosecuting him under Indian law?
Well, I think, the evidence is pretty clear. The fact that, and we had submitted dossiers to the United States, and, if you go through the statements of the United States Supreme Court, it's pretty clear why they did not stop his appeal, why they stopped his appeal. And rejected his appeal not to be extradited. So I think in terms of evidence, there's clear connection. We have clearly established the idea that he was linked with David Coleman Headley in terms of facilitating his travel to India and the recce and so on and so forth. So I think that's beyond doubt. The only the part that gets the most importance here is the idea that I think two leading countries which are working on an international framework for counterterrorism, and India is one of the leading countries that has proposed this convention, comprehensive convention of international terrorism at the UN. I think that cooperation marks really an important cusp at this point.
Right, and on that, what impact could this extradition have on US-India counterterrorism cooperation and diplomatic ties of both the countries with Pakistan?
So I think if you look at the normal foreign policy that the Trump administration has had, or the approach that Trump administration has had vis-a-vis Pakistan, I think it's very clear for all of us to see that it's a policy of neglect, primarily not because the United States has nothing to do with Pakistan, but more because what's happening in Pakistan. I mean, on all its fronts, it is on fire, and then yet it is perpetrating terror across border in India. So I think that continues. The United States has lost utility for Pakistan, the strategic utility that they had vis-a-vis Afghanistan. So in terms of the strategic value of Pakistan, there's nothing left for, at least so for Trump administration, which actually sees, which actually takes a very mercantilist approach. So Pakistan has been tariffed heavily. Now, on the question about what it means for international cooperation between India and the United States, I think it's a next step. Clearly, if you look at the cooperation on Interpol, vis-a-vis Interpol, coordination on Indo-Pacific, vis-a-vis maritime activities, the reconnaissance, the ISR, the intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, all of that has tremendously grown over the past 6-7 years. And I think that is reflected in both continent as well as maritime domain, but particularly in the international domain. This I think is a new ground break.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you very much for being with us on First Post.
Thank you.
Moving on, US President Donald Trump said that he is going to announce tariffs on the country's pharmaceutical imports. President Trump reasoned that the new pharma tariffs are necessary to boost medicine manufacturing within the US. Without revealing the percentage of tariffs set to be levied, Trump added that the duties on pharma imports to the US will be significant.
We have to do, we're going to tariff our pharmaceuticals, and once we do that, they're going to come rushing back into our country because we're the big market. The advantage we have over everybody is that we're the big market. So we're going to be announcing very shortly a major tariff on pharmaceuticals.
Trump had previously exempted pharmaceutical sector from unprecedented reciprocal tariffs on the 2nd of April, what Trump called America's Liberation Day from economic dependence on other countries. The impact of Trump's potential tariffs on pharmaceuticals is expected to adversely impact Indian manufacturers. Now, that's because the US is India's largest export market for pharmaceutical goods. The US accounts for nearly 1/3 of India's total pharmaceutical exports. In 2023 to 24, of India's $27.9 billion worth of pharma exports, 31% or $8.7 billion of pharmaceuticals were exported to the US. Now, some Indian pharmaceutical firms earn anywhere from 30 to 50% of their total revenues from the American market. This includes Dr. Reddy's, Aurobindo Pharma, Zydus Life Sciences, Sun Pharma, and Gland Pharma. After Trump's tariff threat on pharma exports to the US, shares of all of these Indian pharmaceutical firms opened with losses. Once Trump's tariffs go into effect, the pharma firms in India expect raised production costs, erosion of price competitiveness, and higher prices for customers. Which brings us to the individuals who will be worst hit by Trump's potential pharma tariffs: the American prescription drug consumers. Already, on an average, Americans pay about twice what other countries pay for prescription drugs. But with new tariffs, the American consumers will most likely have to pay even more. From essential antibiotics like penicillin to the blood pressure medication, Trump's pharma tariffs could hurt Americans who rely on low-cost generic alternatives to brand-name drugs. For instance, a 24-week course of generic cancer medication could run as high as $10,000 under a 25% tariff from the $6,000 right now. Experts also point out that generic drug manufacturers, most of whom are based out of India, either barely break even or operate on losses. New tariffs could force these firms to consider whether it's even worth it to be in the American market. President Trump's proposed tariffs on pharmaceutical imports will have significant consequences for both American consumers and Indian manufacturers. Despite being aimed at boosting pharma production within the US, these tariffs may lead to higher drug prices and reduced availability of affordable generics. Will these tariffs truly benefit Americans. Now, Trump's latest tariffs have indeed taken the world by storm. Several countries and companies across the world are bearing the brunt of it. It's quite natural for them to look for ways to cope with it or to somehow escape it. US-based tech giant Apple has done something similar. Now, in a bid to avoid being hit by Trump's tariff storm, Apple has reportedly undertaken an urgent logistical operation by airlifting a massive shipment of iPhones and other products from India to the United States in the final days of March. Media reports suggested that 5 full planes of iPhones and other products were dispatched in just 3 days to beat the clock on a newly imposed 10% reciprocal tariff by the Trump administration. Now, Trump's latest tariffs took effect on the 5th of April, and the add-on sweeping reciprocal tariffs came into effect today. This swift action underscores the immediate impact of Trump's trade policies on global corporations. The motivation behind this rapid movement of inventory is clear: to shield American consumers, at least for now, from potential price hikes. Sources say Apple currently has no plans to increase retail prices in India or other markets despite these tariffs. To achieve this, the tech giant has been proactively moving stock from its manufacturing hubs in both India and China to US warehouses, even during what is typically a slower shipping period. Now, this strategic stockpiling will allow Apple to maintain its current pricing structure in the US temporarily by utilizing the reserves that arrive under the previous lower duty rates. These warehouses are reportedly stocked for several months. However, sources also say that any eventual price adjustments to offset the tariff impact would likely be implemented across key global regions, including India. Apple is currently analyzing the complex web of tariff structures across its various manufacturing locations. Looking ahead, the trade landscape could further influence Apple's manufacturing strategy. With higher charges looming, Apple is likely to reevaluate its long-term manufacturing roadmap, and this development positions India as a potentially crucial player in Apple's global production network, as the company looks to diversify its manufacturing away from China. With Indian exports to the US now facing a 27% tariff compared to the considerably higher 54% tariff levied on Chinese goods, India stands to offer Apple a significant tariff advantage. Now, currently focused on iPhone and AirPod production in India, Apple are already accounting for the majority of India's nearly $9 billion worth of smartphone exports to the US. Now, reports even suggest that the US may increasingly look to India as a source for iPhones to mitigate the impact of tariffs on Chinese goods. There have also been reports of American consumers rushing to upgrade their iPhones, fearing steep price hikes on Chinese-made devices as the tariffs fully take hold. The situation remains fluid, and the long-term implications for Apple's pricing, manufacturing footprint, and consumer markets worldwide are still unfolding. Trump's latest tariff order has clearly shaken the global trade landscape. It remains to be seen how the world will cope with this latest challenge. And followers of the self-declared Hindu godman Nityananda, the fugitive spiritual leader who thinks he is the CEO of divinity, have been globetrotting their way through Latin America in a bid to plant the flag of their imaginary nation, the United States of Kailasa, on other people's land. After their grand plans flopped in Ecuador, Paraguay, and even in New Jersey's Newark, which signed and then frantically unsigned an agreement when someone finally Googled Kailasa, they turned their holy GPS to Bolivia. Between September and November of 2024, they inked contracts with at least 4 unsuspecting indigenous communities to lease their land for 1,000 years with an automatic renewal because clearly forever just isn't long enough for the spiritual real estate. Now, a representative of the Abora indigenous people signed away 60,000 hectares of their ancestral rainforest home. This was under a so-called perpetual lease for just $108,000 a year. Not long after, a similar fate befell the Kaubaba indigenous people, as one of their representatives agreed to lease 31,000 hectares of sacred land for over $55,000 annually. And if that wasn't bold enough, the contract promised Kailasa full sovereignty, control over airspace, natural resources, and even demanded the communities defend their imaginary empire in court. Yes, they tried to legally colonize parts of the Amazon with fine print and fairy dust. Everything was set until a Bolivian newspaper exposed the scam. The N18G community, part of the affected indigenous alliance, is now fighting back. Their representatives stated that they were manipulated, misled, and lured in with the promise of easy money. The group released a statement, and I quote, "Our territory is not for sale, it is not for rent, and it is not subject to any kind of negotiation. Our land is the legacy of generations who have cared for and defended it with blood and resistance." End quote. Meanwhile, the Bolivian government is scrambling to distance itself. After the scam came under the spotlight, they issued a statement denying ties. Though a smiling photo of President Luis Arce accepting a Kailasa book from a sari-clad woman isn't helping their case. On the 24th of March, Bolivian authorities made a firm move to protect their sovereignty and indigenous lands. They expelled 20 foreign nationals allegedly linked to Kailasa. The group, which included individuals of Indian, British, and American and Chinese nationalities, had entered Bolivia as tourists. Now, according to the officials, these individuals were actively seeking to acquire land within indigenous territories. And then there's Nityananda himself. His location remains as secret as the Colonel's chicken recipe. Last week, he popped up with a live presidential address on YouTube, and this was to swat away rumors of his demise and to accuse the media of being anti-Hindu. However, he didn't utter a word about Bolivia. Nityananda fled India in 2019. This was after he was charged with the abduction of children and raping a follower. But the real head-scratcher remains, how has fugitive godman Nityananda continued to evade authorities from global powerhouses like the US and India? How are his followers still managing to woo vulnerable indigenous communities into signing away ancestral lands for a make-believe country that exists only in their imagination? The so-called United States of Kailasa. And perhaps most chilling of all, where will this fantasy empire strike next? And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.
It's over! He's done it again! Unbelievable!
Oh, straight into the roof of the net. Nice one. Straight down the middle. So a good performance on both.